My son refused to pay $30,000 to save my life, telling me he didn't have the money, that he couldn't work miracles. 6 months later, he spent $250,000 on my daughter-in-law's extravagant wedding with 500 guests. Years later, they showed up desperate at my house, begging for help. I closed the door, and I've never regretted it. Let me tell you how I got to that moment. How a mother who gave everything ended up being the villain in her own son's story. My name is Julia. I'm 65 years old, and for my entire life, I believed I had done everything right. I thought I had been a good mother, a sacrificial mother, a mother who deserved at least a minimum of gratitude. My husband died when Leo was just 8 years old. A sudden heart attack left me alone, a widow, with a young boy and debts that seemed like impossible mountains to climb. I worked 3 jobs at once for years. I cleaned houses in the morning, worked at a diner in the afternoon, and did sewing and alterations at night. My hands were always cracked. My back always ached, but I never complained, because everything was for Leo. Everything was always for him. I paid for the best school I could afford. I gave up going out with friends to pay for his books. I sold the few pieces of jewelry my mother had left me to buy him a computer when he went to college. He was studying business administration, and I was so proud, so full of hope that my sacrifice would be worth it. Leo graduated with honors. He got an excellent job at a multinational corporation. He started earning well, very well. He moved into an apartment in the most expensive part of the city. He bought designer clothes, dined at restaurants where a single dish cost more than my weekly salary. And I continued to live in the same small apartment where I had raised him, with the same worn-out curtains, with the same refrigerator that had been making strange noises for 10 years. But I was happy to see him succeed. I never asked him for anything. I never made a claim. He would visit me once a month, always in a hurry, always looking at his phone. He'd give me a quick hug and leave. But I thought that's how successful children were. Busy, important. Then he met Danielle. Danielle was everything I was not. Tall, thin, with that perfect hair that looked like it was from a shampoo commercial. She came from a wealthy family, the kind that summered in Europe and had weekend homes. She worked in marketing, but more as a hobby than out of necessity. Her father owned several companies. From the first day, I knew she looked down on me. When Leo introduced me to her at a restaurant, she barely shook my hand. She looked me up and down, noticed my old dress, my worn shoes, and smiled that fake smile that only women know how to decipher. It was a smile that clearly said, "You are not on my level." Leo was blind, completely mesmerized by her. He talked about Danielle as if she were an angel sent from heaven. I tried to be kind, I tried to get closer, but she always made excuses not to visit me. She'd say she had migraines, that she was too busy, that the traffic was impossible. The truth was simple. I embarrassed her. A year after they got together, Leo called me, excited, to tell me they were getting married. I cried with happiness. I thought that maybe with the marriage, things would get better, that Danielle would accept me as part of the family. How naive I was. What I didn't know was that my life was about to become a nightmare. It all began 3 months before the wedding. I was in my apartment lifting a heavy box onto a high shelf. It had rained, and the floor was slippery. My legs weren't what they used to be. My knees creaked with every movement. I climbed onto an old chair that had seen years of use. The chair broke. I fell from a height of almost 7 feet. The pain was instantaneous, excruciating, as if 1,000 knives were piercing my back and legs at the same time. I couldn't move. I screamed, but no one heard me. I lived alone. I had always lived alone. Hours passed until my neighbor, Mrs. Irene, heard my moans and called an ambulance. At the hospital, the diagnosis was devastating. Multiple fractures in my spine, 3 compromised vertebrae, nerve damage. I needed urgent surgery. Without it, the doctors were clear. I could be paralyzed, or live with chronic pain so intense that every day would be hell. The cost of the surgery, $30,000. $30,000 that I didn't have. My savings barely reached $4,000. I had spent everything on Leo, on his education, on his future. I had never kept anything for myself. I called Leo from the hospital bed. My hands trembled as I dialed his number. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice impatient. "Mom? I'm in an important meeting." "Leo, honey, I had an accident. I'm in the hospital." There was a brief silence. What happened? I explained everything. The fall, the fractures, the urgent surgery. I told him that without this operation I could be paralyzed forever. I told him the cost. $30,000. Another silence. Longer. Colder. "Mom, I don't have that kind of money." I felt as if I had been punched in the chest. "Leo, please, it's urgent. The doctors say that every day that passes without the surgery, my condition gets worse. I already told you, I don't have that money. I can't work miracles. I'm about to get married. I have a lot of expenses. Danielle and I are planning the wedding. And everything costs a fortune." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Son, I raised you alone. I worked 3 jobs so you could go to school. I sold everything I had to give you a better life. I know, Mom, and I appreciate it. But that was your decision. I didn't ask you to do all that. And now I can't just pull $30,000 out of thin air. Talk to the hospital. Look for financing options. I don't know. I can't help you." He hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand as if it were a foreign object, as if I couldn't process what I had just heard. My son, the boy I had held in my arms, whom I had fed with my own sacrifice, had just told me he couldn't help me, that my survival was not his problem. The nurses came in and out of my room. They asked if I was okay, if I needed anything for the pain. I nodded silently. But the physical pain was nothing compared to what I felt in my chest. It was as if something had broken inside me, something that could never be repaired. Irene, my neighbor and only true friend, came to visit me that same afternoon. She was 70 years old, a widow like me, and she had always been sharper than most people I knew. When I told her what Leo had said, her face hardened. "That boy has no shame," she said in a firm voice. "After everything you did for him." "Maybe he's right," I whispered. "Maybe he doesn't have the money. He's getting married. He has expenses. Julia, wake up. That son of yours makes more in a month than you and I make in a year. If he doesn't want to help you, it's because he doesn't want to. Period." Her words hurt because I knew she was right. But a part of me still clung to the hope that Leo would reconsider, that he would call the next day saying he had found a way to get the money, that his conscience wouldn't let him sleep. But he didn't call. 3 days passed. I was still in the hospital, with increasingly intense pain. The doctors were pressuring me to make a decision. Either I had the surgery soon, or I would have to settle for palliative treatment that would only manage the pain but not solve the underlying problem. I would be left with limited mobility, chronic pain, dependent on painkillers for the rest of my life. I tried calling Leo 2 more times. Both times, he sent me straight to voicemail. I wrote him messages. Long, desperate, pleading messages. I reminded him of every sacrifice I had made for him, every sleepless night when he was sick as a child, every meal I skipped so he could have a full plate, every dream I abandoned so he could fulfill his. He replied with a cold, 2-line message. "Mom, I already told you I can't help. Please stop pressuring me. I'm stressed with the wedding preparations." The wedding preparations. Those words were seared into my mind like a branding iron. Irene became my guardian angel. She sold some jewelry she had saved and lent me $5,000. I spoke with the hospital and got a brutal financing plan that would leave me in debt for years. I sold my television, my refrigerator, some furniture. I asked for loans from acquaintances. I gathered just enough to pay for the basic surgery, not the complete one I really needed, but at least something to avoid paralysis. I had the surgery 2 weeks after the accident. The recovery was hell, constant pain, exhausting rehabilitation, and the bitter certainty that my own son had abandoned me in the worst moment of my life. Leo didn't visit me a single time, not at the hospital, not when I returned home. Nothing. It was as if I had ceased to exist. But life has curious ways of showing you the truth. 2 months after my surgery, while I was still limping and depending on a cane to walk, I started seeing posts on social media. Posts about Leo and Danielle's wedding. At first, I thought they would be normal photos. A simple ceremony, an intimate party with close friends. Something reasonable. I was completely wrong. The wedding was at a five-star hotel in the most exclusive part of the city. 500 guests. 500. People who didn't even know Leo well, but were invited because Danielle wanted to impress half the world. I was not invited. Let me repeat that. His own mother was not invited to his wedding. When I found out, I called Leo. This time he answered. "Why didn't you invite me to your wedding?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Mom, what?" "Danielle and I decided to do something intimate, just for close people. 500 guests is intimate?" An uncomfortable silence. "It's complicated. Danielle has a large family. There are social obligations. You wouldn't have been comfortable there. They're a different class of people." Those words were like a slap in the face. "A different class? Are you ashamed of me?" "It's not that, Mom. It's just that, look, the wedding is over. There's no point in discussing this now. You left me to die alone, Leo. You denied me $30,000 for a surgery I needed to avoid being paralyzed. And now I see you spent a fortune on a wedding where you didn't even want me. That's different. The wedding was important to Danielle. It was her dream. I couldn't disappoint her. But you could disappoint me. You could leave me for dead. Mom, that's enough. I'm not continuing this conversation. I'm on my honeymoon." He hung up again. I sat in my living room, staring at the empty walls of my apartment. I had sold almost everything to pay for the surgery. I was living with the bare minimum. I ate once a day, so I could pay the installments on the hospital loan. My body still hurt. It would probably hurt forever because I couldn't afford the complete surgery. And my son was on his honeymoon. Irene came over that night and found me crying. "I need you to see something," she said, showing me her phone. It was an article in a society magazine, a full feature on Leo and Danielle's wedding, professional photos, interviews, every detail of the celebration. And that's when I discovered the magnitude of the betrayal. The wedding had cost $250,000. $250,000. Danielle's dress, an exclusive design brought from Paris, had cost $25,000. It was champagne-colored silk with thousands of hand-sewn crystals. It had a 20-foot train that required 4 people to carry. The flowers, imported roses and exotic orchids, had cost $15,000. Gigantic arrangements on every table, a 12-foot floral arch at the altar, petals covering every inch of the aisle. The food, a 7-course menu prepared by an award-winning chef, had cost $80,000 for 500 guests. Lobster, caviar, filet mignon, desserts with edible gold leaf. The music, a full 30-piece symphony orchestra, plus a famous international DJ, had cost $30,000. The drinks, a premium open bar all night with French champagne and 50-year-old whiskey, had cost $25,000. The ballroom decor, with crystal curtains, synchronized LED lighting, and 3D projections, had cost $20,000. The honeymoon in Dubai, 2 weeks in a 7-star hotel with private excursions, had cost $35,000. And the invitations, handmade with imported paper and gold calligraphy, had cost $5,000. Every number I read was like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. My son had spent $250,000 on a one-day party. He had denied me $30,000 to save my life. I did the math in my head, over and over, as if repeating it could change the outcome. With $30,000, I would have paid for the complete surgery. I would have recovered well. I wouldn't be limping. I wouldn't be in debt. I wouldn't be suffering from chronic pain every single day. But Leo had decided that Danielle's dress, which she wore only once for a few hours, was more important than his mother's health. That the flowers that wilted the next day were more important. That the food people forgot a week later was more important. That impressing 500 strangers was more important than saving the woman who gave him life. Irene hugged me as I cried. "That boy is going to pay for this," she said firmly. "Life has a way of collecting its debts, Julia. You'll see." I didn't believe her at that moment. I just felt an immense emptiness, a sadness so deep it was suffocating. But Irene was right. Life always collects its debts. And Leo's bill was just beginning. The following months were the darkest of my life. I woke up every morning in pain. a physical pain that shot through my back and legs, a constant reminder that my body would never be the same. But there was another pain, an invisible one that hurt much more. The certainty that my son had betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. I walked with a cane. Sometimes, on bad days, I needed two. My neighbors looked at me with pity when they saw me limping to the corner store. I held my head high, but inside I was dying of humiliation, sadness, and rage. Irene became my only family. She accompanied me to doctor's appointments, helped me with groceries, and sat with me on nights when the pain was so intense I couldn't sleep. She would make me tea and listen to me cry without judgment. You know what the worst part is? I told her one night that a part of me still expects Leo to show up, to knock on my door, to apologize, to tell me he made a terrible mistake. Julia, that boy is not coming, Irene replied with her brutal honesty. But you have to decide what you're going to do with all this. You can stay here, waiting for an apology that will never come, or you can get up and move on. Move on? I can barely walk. I'm not talking about walking, I'm talking about living. About not letting him completely destroy you. She was right, but at that moment, I had no strength for anything, only to survive day by day. Leo never called after the wedding, never asked how I was, never sent a message. It was as if I had died to him, as if the 65 years of my life, the years I spent raising him, feeding him, loving him, had been erased from his memory. But I didn't forget him. Every night, when the pain woke me at 3 a.m, I thought of him. I thought of that $250,000 wedding. I thought of how he had chosen appearances over his own mother. And something began to change inside me. At first, it was just a small thought, a tiny voice in the back of my mind. But over time, that voice grew louder, clearer, more resolute. I was not going to let this go. I started saving things. Every article I found about the wedding, every photo that appeared on social media, every post where Danielle flaunted her $25,000 dress, her $15,000 flowers, her honeymoon in Dubai. I printed the messages where Leo had denied me help, where he had told me he had no money, where he had hung up on me when I pleaded for my life. I kept them in a folder, along with my medical bills, my loan receipts, my hospital documents. Irene watched me do all this with curiosity. "What are you planning?" she asked one day. "I don't know yet," I replied, "but I know this can't be the end of it. He needs to know that what he did has consequences. Just be careful, Julia. Revenge can consume you." "This isn't revenge," I said, looking her in the eye. "It's justice." I didn't know exactly what I was going to do with all that information. I just knew that one day I would need it. One day, Leo would have to face what he had done to me. Meanwhile, my life continued to be a constant struggle. The debts were suffocating me. The hospital loan, the pain medication, the physical therapy I needed to not completely lose mobility. Everything cost money I didn't have. I had to sell more things. My old bed for a cheaper used one. My armchair. The few books I had left. Each object held a memory, a story, and letting them go was like tearing away pieces of my life. But I had no choice. I got a part-time job doing sewing from home. Simple repairs, hems, buttons. I earned just enough to eat. My hands, already aged and sore, now worked until they bled. But I didn't complain. I had learned not to complain many years ago. One afternoon, 6 months after the wedding, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Julia?" asked a female voice I didn't recognize. "Yes. Who is this?" "It's Mariana, Danielle's cousin. We met briefly well, on one occasion. I didn't remember meeting her, but I said nothing. How can I help you?" There was an awkward pause. "Look, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but I feel like someone has to. Danielle and Leo are having problems." My heart sped up, but I kept my voice calm. "What kind of problems?" "Money problems. Leo invested in a business with Danielle's father, an import company. He put all his money into it, his savings, he even took out loans. The business went bankrupt. They lost everything. I felt a strange mix of emotions, shock, disbelief, and a small spark of something I didn't dare call satisfaction. Everything? I asked. Everything. The apartment they lived in was in Danielle's father's name, and he sold it to cover some of the debts. Leo lost his job because he was so distracted by the financial disaster that he made serious mistakes. Now they're living with Danielle's parents, but the relationship is very tense. I've heard that Danielle is thinking of leaving him. And why are you telling me this? I asked, though I already knew the answer, because I've heard that Leo is thinking of looking for you, that he's going to ask you for help, and I wanted to warn you. That man doesn't deserve your help, Julia. I know what he did to you. Danielle told me you weren't invited to the wedding, that Leo denied you money when you were sick. That's unforgivable. Why are you helping me? I asked, genuinely confused. Because I have a mother, too. And if someone did to my mother what Leo did to you, I couldn't live with myself without doing something. I thanked her for the call and hung up. I sat in my small living room, processing the information. Leo had lost everything. The money he had spent so irresponsibly on that absurd wedding, the savings he had accumulated while I was starving, everything he had chosen over me, gone. Irene arrived that afternoon and I told her everything. Life is collecting the debt, she said, nodding. Faster than I thought. Mariana said he's going to come looking for me, that he's going to ask for my help. And what are you going to do? I looked out the window of my apartment, the same apartment where I had raised Leo, where I had worked until dawn to give him a better life, where I had cried with pride when he graduated, where I had cried in pain when he abandoned me. I don't know, I replied, but I know that when he comes, I'm not going to be the same naive mother I was before. Good, Irene said. It's about time you woke up. 2 more weeks passed. I continued with my routine, sewing, going to physical therapy, surviving. But there was an anticipation in the air, a certainty that something was about to happen. And then, one rainy October afternoon, I heard a knock on my door. It was a soft, almost timid knock, so different from the confident raps Leo used to give when he was young and came to visit. I got up slowly, leaning on my cane. I walked to the door. I looked through the peephole. It was Leo. But it wasn't the successful, self-assured Leo who had spent $250,000 on a wedding. It was a haggard Leo, with deep dark circles, disheveled hair, and wrinkled clothes. He looked defeated, destroyed. And next to him was Danielle. She wasn't the radiant woman from the wedding photos either. Her perfect hair was now dull, poorly cut. Her face had worry lines. Her nails, which she had always kept perfectly manicured, were now bitten, uneven. They both looked like what they were. People who had fallen from a great height and didn't know how to get up. Leo knocked again. "Mom, I know you're in there. Please open up. We need to talk." His voice sounded broken, desperate. Something inside me wanted to open that door. I wanted to hug my son, ask him what had happened, offer him help as I had done my whole life. But then I remembered. I remembered his cold voice, telling me he had no money. I remembered the click of the phone when he hung up on me. I remembered the photos of that obscene wedding while I was selling my furniture to pay for medicine. I remembered every day of pain, every sleepless night, every tear I shed alone in this apartment, and my hand stopped on the doorknob. I stood frozen in front of the door, my hand trembling on the handle. Every fiber of my being screamed 2 contradictory things. One part of me, the mother I had been my whole life, wanted to open it. I wanted to comfort my son. I wanted to fix his problems as I had since he was born. But there was another part, a new part that had been born in those months of abandonment and pain, a part that whispered, "Don't do it. Not this time." Leo knocked again, this time more insistently. "Mom, please. I know you've suffered. I know I made mistakes. But I need to talk to you. We're desperate." I heard Danielle's voice behind him, quieter but just as urgent. "Leo, maybe we should come back another day. I don't think she wants to see us." "We don't have another day," he replied, with a tone of panic I had never heard from him. "We don't have time. We have nowhere to go." I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, and I took a step back, away from the door. "Mom? Are you there?" Leo knocked again, now pounding more forcefully. "Mom, please, just let me explain. Everything got out of control. We lost everything. The business went bankrupt. I lost my job. We're being evicted. Danielle's parents don't want to help us anymore. We don't even have money for food. Please, Mom, you're the only one we have left. You're the only one we have left. Those words echoed in my head like a slap. I was the last option, the last resort. After ignoring me, humiliating me, leaving me to nearly die, now they came back because they had no one else. Not because they loved me, not because they felt guilty, not because they had reflected on what they did to me, only because they were desperate. Mom, I promise we'll pay you back for everything. We just need a place to stay for a few months. Just until I get another job, I'm begging you. Danielle spoke then, her voice trying to sound sweet but cracking. Julia, I know I haven't been the best daughter-in-law. I know I made mistakes. But I swear, if you help us now, everything will be different. I'll treat you as you deserve. I'll take care of you. Please, don't leave us on the street. I pressed my forehead against the door. Tears streamed down my cheeks. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of frustration, of helplessness in the face of my own weakness. Because a part of me still wanted to believe them. But then I remembered something Irene had told me weeks ago. People don't change because they suffer consequences. They change when they decide to change. And most people never decide to. Mom, please. Leo was now crying openly. I'm your son. Your only son. Are you going to leave me high and dry? Are you going to abandon me when I need you most? Those words were the trigger. I threw the door open. Leo and Danielle looked at me with hope, relief on their faces. Leo took a step forward, as if to hug me. I raised my hand, stopping him. Am I going to abandon you? My voice came out stronger than I expected. Am I going to leave you high and dry when you need me most? Leo blinked, confused by my tone. Mom, You abandoned me, I continued, feeling 30 years of submission and sacrifice turn into fury. You left me stranded in a hospital, with fractures that could have left me paralyzed because you didn't have $30,000. Do you remember, Leo? Do you remember that call? His face went pale. Mom, I explained that. You explained that you couldn't work miracles, that you were planning your wedding, that you had a lot of expenses. That's true. You spent $250,000 on a wedding, I shouted, and I saw them both take a step back. $250,000 in a single day, on flowers that wilted, on food that people forgot, on a dress that Danielle wore for a few hours, while I was selling my furniture just to eat, while I was taking out loans that I'm still paying off, while I was walking with a cane because I couldn't afford the complete surgery. Danielle tried to speak. Julia, that was before we knew that. That what? I interrupted her. That you were going to lose everything? Is that what you were going to say? That if you had known the money was going to run out, then you would have helped me? No, I didn't mean that, Danielle stammered, her eyes filling with fake tears. You didn't even invite me to your wedding, I continued, looking directly at her. Your husband's mother, the woman who raised the man you married, wasn't good enough to be at your special day. You told Leo I wouldn't fit in, that I was from another class, right? Leo looked down, unable to deny it. Mom, those were bad decisions. We were blinded. Danielle came from a family with money, and I wanted to impress her. I wanted to show her I could give her the life she deserved. And what about me? Did I not deserve anything? The one who worked 3 jobs to raise you? The one who sold my mother's jewelry to buy you a computer? The one who skipped meals so you could eat? Did I not deserve a miserable $30,000 so I could walk without pain? The silence that followed was crushing. Leo tried to approach again. You're right about everything. I was a terrible son, a monster. But Mom, please, give me a chance to make it up to you. Let us stay here. I'll get a job. I'll pay you back every cent I owe you. I'll help you like I should have from the beginning. I looked at my son. I saw the dark circles, the disheveled hair, the desperation in his eyes. I saw the successful man turned into a beggar. And I felt no pity. I felt something I had never felt for him before. Contempt. No, I said simply. What? Leo blinked as if he hadn't understood. I said no. You are not staying here. I am not helping you. But Mom, when I needed you, you told me you couldn't work miracles. Well, I can't either. I don't have space. I don't have money. I barely have enough for myself. I'm still paying off debts for a surgery I shouldn't have had to pay for alone. Danielle clasped her hands, pleading. Julia, please, don't be cruel. Cruel? I cut her off, feeling the rage boil in my blood. I'm cruel? Me? The woman who begged for her life and was ignored? The woman who wasn't invited to her own son's wedding? The woman who was alone in a hospital while you were taste-testing $80,000 menus? We made mistakes. Leo was now crying openly. Big mistakes. But Mom, I'm your son, your own blood. Are you going to condemn me for one mistake? It wasn't a mistake, Leo. It was a choice. You chose that your mother wasn't worth $30,000. You chose that impressing people you didn't know was more important than saving the woman who gave you life. And now I'm making a choice. I'm choosing not to be your safety net anymore. Your backup plan. Your last resort. So what are we going to do? Danielle asked, her voice now cold, showing her true nature. Where are we going to go? I don't know, I answered honestly. And frankly, I don't care. Look for those financing options Leo suggested to me when I was in the hospital. Talk to institutions. Ask strangers for help. Do whatever you have to do. But don't count on me. Leo took a step toward me, his face transformed by desperation. Mom, you're going to leave us on the street. Literally on the street. Can you live with that? Can you sleep at night, knowing your son has nowhere to sleep? I looked at him intently and spoke the words I had been holding back for 7 months. You could sleep, knowing your mother was almost paralyzed because she couldn't afford surgery. So yes, Leo, I will be able to sleep perfectly fine. I saw my words hit him like punches. His face crumbled. Danielle took his arm, pulling him. Let's go, Leo. There's nothing for us here. But Leo didn't move. He looked at me as if he were seeing me for the first time, as if he were finally understanding the magnitude of what he had done. Mom, I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm truly sorry. Me too, I replied. I'm sorry I raised a son who values appearances more than his own mother. I'm sorry I sacrificed my life for someone who abandoned me when I needed him most. And I'm sorry you had to lose everything to come looking for me. Give me another chance, he pleaded. Just one. I shook my head. I already gave you all the chances in the world. I gave you my youth, my health, my money, my unconditional love. And you turned your back on me. Now it's my turn to turn my back on you. And without another word, I closed the door. I heard them on the other side, knocking, shouting, pleading. Leo called my name over and over, Danielle cried. They threatened, they begged, they promised. But I walked away from the door, sat in my used armchair, and for the first time in months, I smiled. The following days were strange, a mix of liberation and guilt that gnawed at me from the inside. Every time I thought of Leo's face, his desperation, I felt a knot in my stomach. But then I remembered my own desperation, my own ignored pleas, and the knot would loosen. Irene came to visit the next day. I told her everything. Every word I had said, every expression on Leo's face, every plea I had ignored. Did I do the right thing? I asked, needing her validation. What do you think? She replied, in her way of turning questions back to me. I don't know. I'm his mother. Mothers are supposed to always forgive. Always give another chance. Mothers are also human beings, Julia. They have limits. They have dignity. They are not bottomless piggy banks of forgiveness and sacrifice. But he looked so broken, so lost. And you looked broken too when he closed the door on you. Did he feel guilty then? Did he come running to help you? No. He only came when he needed you. That's not love. That's convenience. Her words comforted me, but the guilt was still there, like a permanent shadow. Leo tried to contact me several times that week. Calls I didn't answer. Messages I didn't read. He even came to my door again. But I just turned up the volume on the radio and ignored him until he left. One afternoon, 2 weeks after the encounter, I received a call from Mariana, Danielle's cousin. Julia, I need to tell you something, she said in an urgent voice. What happened? Leo and Danielle are living in a shelter. The relationship is completely broken. Danielle blames him for everything. Says he convinced her to invest in that fraudulent business. Leo is desperately looking for work, but his reputation in the industry was destroyed after the mistakes he made at his last job. No one wants to hire him. I listened in silence, not knowing what to feel. Danielle is talking about divorce, Mariana continued. She says she married a successful man, not a failure. Her words, not mine. And you're telling me this why? I asked. Because Leo is falling apart. I've heard he's having panic attacks, that he's not sleeping, that he's barely eating. And I know you closed the door, and I completely understand why you did it. But I thought you should know. I hung up the phone feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't untangle. Part of me felt a dark satisfaction knowing that Leo was suffering the consequences of his decisions. But another part, that maternal part that never completely disappears, felt pain for his suffering. You can't save him from this, Irene told me when I recounted the conversation. He needs to learn. He needs to truly hit rock bottom. If you rescue him now, he'll never understand the gravity of what he did to you. And if it's too late, and if he completely destroys himself, then it will be his choice, not your responsibility. You've already done your part, more than your part. Now he has to do his. Another month passed. Every day was a battle against my own nature, against the instinct to call him, to look for him, to rescue him as I had his entire life. But I stood firm. And then something happened that changed everything. One afternoon, while I was sewing a dress in my small living room, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something urged me to answer. Julia? A professional female voice asked. Yes. Who's calling? My name is Anna. I'm a social worker at the city shelter. Your son Leo is here with us. My heart pounded. Is he okay? Physically, yes. But emotionally, he's in a very bad state. He had a crisis this morning. He's been asking for you insistently. He says he needs to talk to you, that he has something important to tell you. I don't want to talk to him, I replied, though my voice trembled as I said it. I understand there are family issues. He's told us a bit about the situation. But, Julia, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I can tell when someone is manipulating and when someone is genuinely sorry. Leo is broken. I'm not asking you to forgive him. I'm just asking you to come and listen to him. Once. Just once. Why should I? Because if you don't, you'll live the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you had come. And he'll live the rest of his without being able to tell you what he needs to tell you. Sometimes closure is necessary, even when it doesn't end in reconciliation. Her words hit me hard. She was right. If I never heard what Leo had to say, I would always have that doubt, that unanswered question. When can I come? I finally asked. Whenever you want. We're here every day. I hung up and stared at the phone for several minutes. Irene arrived shortly after, as if she had sensed I needed her. They called from the shelter, I told her. They want me to go see Leo. And are you going to go? I don't know. I'm scared. Scared of what? Scared that he'll manipulate me again. Scared that his words will soften me. Scared of going back to being the weak mother I always was. Irene sat next to me and took my hand. Julia, you're not that woman anymore. What you did a month ago, closing the door on him, that took more strength than most people have in their entire lives. If you go to that shelter, you'll go as a different woman. A woman who knows her worth. A woman who won't be manipulated. And what if I'm wrong? What if I'm weaker than I think? Then I'll go with you. You don't have to face him alone. Her words gave me the courage I needed. The next day, Irene and I took a bus to the city shelter. It was a gray, depressing building with peeling walls and dirty windows. The waiting room smelled of dampness and despair. Anna, the social worker, greeted us with a kind but professional smile. Thank you for coming, she said. Leo is in the visiting room. Would you like me to be present during the conversation? No, I replied. But I want my friend Irene to be with me. Of course. She led us down a long hallway to a small room with a table and some plastic chairs, and there was Leo. I didn't recognize him at first. The successful man who had spent $250,000 on a wedding no longer existed. In his place was a gaunt man, with a scruffy beard, dirty and wrinkled clothes, and sunken eyes that had lost all their arrogance. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 2 months. When he saw me enter, his eyes filled with tears. He tried to stand up, but his legs seemed to fail him, and he sat back down. "Mom," he whispered, his voice barely audible. I sat across from him, with Irene by my side. I kept my expression neutral, my posture firm. I was not going to let him see me as weak. "The social worker said you wanted to talk to me," I said, my voice colder than I felt inside. "I'm here. Talk." Leo took a deep breath, wiping tears with the back of his hand. "I don't know where to start," he said. "Start wherever you want, but make it quick. I don't have all day." My words were harsh, deliberately harsh. I needed to maintain that distance, that barrier between us. "Mom, I've had a lot of time to think. A lot of time alone, in this shelter, with nothing to do but remember. Remember every decision I made, every word I said to you, every time I ignored you." "And?" I asked, giving him no quarter, and I realized I was a monster, not just to you, to everyone. I became someone I don't recognize, someone who valued money and appearances more than people, more than you. I already know that, Leo. Did you come all this way just to tell me the obvious?" "No," he said, his voice cracking. "I came to ask for your forgiveness. A forgiveness I know I don't deserve. A forgiveness I'll probably never receive. But I needed to tell you. I needed you to know that I understand. That finally, after losing everything, I understand what I did to you." "You understand what, exactly?" I pressed, because I'd like to hear it in your own words. Leo closed his eyes, and when he opened them, there was something different in them, something I had never seen before, genuine shame. "I understand that when you fell, when you broke your back, when you called me from that hospital, you weren't asking for a favor. You were asking for your life. And I told you I didn't have money. I lied to you, Mom. I did have money. I had a lot of money, but I was saving it for that damn wedding." His voice broke completely, but he continued. "I told you I couldn't work miracles. When you had worked miracles for me my whole life, you sacrificed for me for years. And when it was time for me to give back, even a fraction of all that, I turned my back on you." Tears were now streaming freely down Leo's face. They weren't the manipulative tears I had seen so many times before. These were different. These came from a deep place, from real pain. "I spent $250,000 in a single day," he continued, his voice a hoarse whisper, "an obscene amount of money on something completely unnecessary. While you were selling your furniture to be able to eat, while you were walking with a cane because you couldn't afford the complete surgery. And the worst part, Mom, the worst part of all, is that I didn't even invite you. I excluded you from my own wedding because Danielle said you wouldn't fit in, and I let her." He squeezed his eyes shut, as if the words caused him physical pain to speak them. "I let that woman insult you. I let her make you feel inferior. And I convinced myself it was okay, that it was the right thing to do, because I was so obsessed with impressing her family, with proving I was worthy of her, that I forgot who had truly made me who I was." Irene squeezed my hand under the table. I remained silent, letting Leo continue. "After the wedding, when we were in Dubai, Danielle posted pictures every day. She showed off every detail, every luxury, and I felt proud. I felt successful. But there was a moment, every night, just before I went to sleep, when I thought of you, of your call from the hospital, of your voice begging me, and I pushed those thoughts away. I told myself you were exaggerating, that you had found another way to solve the problem, that it wasn't that serious." He wiped his face with the sleeve of his dirty shirt. "But when that business failed, when I lost everything in a matter of weeks, when Danielle started treating me with the same contempt she treated everyone else, I finally understood. I understood what desperation is, what it's like to call someone for help and have the door slammed in your face, what it feels like to be completely alone, with no one to lend you a hand. Now you know how I felt," I said, my voice coming out colder than I intended. "Yes," Leo replied, looking me straight in the eyes. Now I know. And Mom, if I could go back in time, if I could change just one single decision, it would be that one. I would go to that hospital, pay for that surgery, and I would stay by your side until you recovered. I would cancel that ridiculous wedding. I would tell Danielle that my mother was more important than any party. I would do everything differently. But you can't, I replied. Time doesn't go backward. Decisions have consequences. And now you have to live with yours, just as I've had to live with mine. I know, he said, looking down. And I didn't come here expecting you to forgive me. I didn't come here expecting you to rescue me. Danielle left me a week ago. She signed the divorce papers without a second thought. She said she didn't sign up to live in misery, that she had married a winner, not a loser. A bitter laugh escaped his lips. You know what's ironic? That now I understand why you wouldn't let her live with me when we came to your door. Because you saw in her what I refused to see. You saw she was a superficial, selfish person who only wanted me for my money. And you, who loved me unconditionally, never had the right to be at our wedding. He covered his face with his hands. I've been in this shelter for 3 weeks. I sleep on a cot next to 12 other men. I eat in a dining hall where they give us the same thing every day. I look for work, but no one wants to hire me. My reputation is destroyed. My references are terrible. I have no money, no future, no nothing. He looked up at me, and there was something in his eyes I had never seen before. Humility. And I deserve it. All of this, I deserve it. I didn't come here to ask you to get me out of this. I came because I needed you to know that I get it. That finally, after losing everything, I understand the value of what I had. I understand who truly loved me. I understand that the only person who was ever willing to sacrifice everything for me was the one I treated the worst. The words hung in the air between us. I could feel Irene watching me, waiting for my reaction. I could feel Anna, the social worker, who was surely observing us from some camera or window. But most of all, I could feel the battle within me. The mother who wanted to hug him, comfort him, tell him everything would be okay. And the woman who had learned, painfully, that love does not mean accepting any abuse. You know what's the saddest part of all this, Leo? I said finally, my voice controlled but firm. That you had to lose everything to value me. That you had to hit rock bottom to understand what my love meant. That you needed to suffer to develop empathy. I know, he whispered. And it's unforgivable. You're right, it is unforgivable. Because I never needed to lose anything to value you. I valued you from the moment you were born. I put you above everything, my health, my happiness, my own life. And you only valued me when you had no other choice. Leo nodded slowly, accepting each word like the blow it was. I don't expect your forgiveness, he said. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. That if I could change things, I would. That I understand if you never want to see me again. That I understand if you hate me. I don't hate you, I said, and it was the truth. Hate requires too much energy, and I don't have any more energy to give you. I've given you all the energy I had for 60 years. I have none left. I stood up from the chair, leaning on my cane. Irene stood with me, always by my side. Mom, wait. Leo stood up too, staggering slightly. Is that it? You're just leaving? What else do you want me to say? I asked, turning to look at him one last time. I don't know. Something. Anything. Yell at me. Insult me. Tell me I'm the worst son in the world. But don't just leave like this, in silence, as if I no longer exist to you. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of all the emotions that had built up for months. You ceased to exist for me the day you hung up the phone on me in the hospital. The day you told me you couldn't work miracles. The day you chose appearances over my life. And no, Leo, I'm not going to yell at you or insult you, because that would mean I still care enough to spend my anger on you. And I don't anymore. I saw how my words destroyed him more than any insult could have. So, this is the end? He asked, his voice barely audible. This was the end months ago, I replied. You just hadn't realized it. I walked toward the door, each step supported by my cane, a permanent reminder of what he had done to me. Irene walked beside me, her presence a silent comfort. "Mom," Leo called one last time. If you ever change your mind, if you can ever forgive me, I'll be waiting. No matter how long it takes, I'm going to work on being a man who deserves to be your son. And if one day you decide to give me another chance, I'll do everything I can to show you I've changed." I stopped at the door, without turning. "Don't wait for me, Leo. Live your life. Learn from your mistakes. Become a better man. But do it for you, not for me. Because I'm not going to be here waiting for you to be the son you should have been from the beginning." And without looking back, I walked out of that room. On the bus ride back, Irene took my hand. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Part of me feels relieved. I said everything I needed to say. But another part feels empty." "That's the part that still loves him," Irene said softly. "And it's always going to be there, Julia. Being a mother doesn't turn off like a switch. But that doesn't mean you have to let him keep hurting you. Did I do the right thing? Only you can answer that. But I'll tell you something. The woman I knew a year ago wouldn't have been able to do what you just did. You've grown. You've found your voice. You've learned to set boundaries. And that, regardless of what happens with Leo, is something valuable." I looked out the bus window, watching the city pass by. My city, where I had raised my son, where I had worked to exhaustion, where I had suffered and cried, where I had been abandoned, and where, in some strange and painful way, I had found my strength. When I got to my apartment that night, I sat in my small living room and cried. I cried for the son I had lost, for the relationship that would never be again, for the years of sacrifice that seemed to have meant nothing. But I also cried with relief, because I had finally spoken my truth. I had finally set boundaries. I had finally chosen my dignity over my maternal instinct. And in that crying, there was something like liberation. The days following my meeting with Leo were strangely calm. It was as if a storm that had been raging inside me for months had finally subsided. I didn't feel peace exactly, but I no longer felt the constant pain that had accompanied me since the day of the accident. Irene came over every day for coffee. We didn't talk much about Leo. It was as if we both knew that chapter needed to be closed, at least for now. "Have you thought about what you're going to do now?" she asked one afternoon as we sewed together. "What do you mean?" "Your life, Julia. You've spent the last few months in survival mode, fighting pain, paying off debts, processing your son's betrayal. But at some point, you have to start living again, not just surviving." Her words took me by surprise. She was right. I had been so consumed by everything that had happened that I hadn't thought about the future, about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. "I don't know if I even know how to do that anymore," I admitted. "Then it's time you learn," she said with a smile. "And I'm going to help you." But the universe had other plans. 3 days after that conversation, while I was at the market buying vegetables, I felt someone watching me. I looked up and saw Danielle at the other end of the aisle. She was wearing clothes that had clearly seen better days. Her hair lacked its former shine. Her face and makeup showed the marks of stress. Our eyes met. For a moment, I thought she would ignore me, just walk past as if she didn't know me. But to my surprise, she walked straight toward me. "Julia," she said, her voice uncertain. "Danielle," I replied coolly, giving her no emotional advantage. I need to talk to you. We have nothing to talk about. Please." There was desperation in her voice. "Just 5 minutes. I'm begging you." Something in her tone made me hesitate. This was not the arrogant Danielle I had known. This was a completely different version, a version humbled by life. 3 minutes, I said finally. "And right here. I'm not going anywhere with you." She nodded quickly, grateful. I want to apologize," she began, the words tumbling out. "I know I have no right. I know I was terrible to you, that I treated you like you were less than nothing, that I convinced Leo not to invite you to the wedding, that I spent a fortune on a ridiculous party while you were suffering. And?" I asked, not softening my expression. "And now I understand how you felt. I married Leo because he was successful, because he had money, because he could give me the life I wanted. I never really loved him. And when he lost everything, I left him without a second thought. just like he left you." Her eyes filled with tears. "My family rejected me. They said I had brought shame to the family name by divorcing so quickly, by showing who I really was. My friends, all those women who were at the wedding, who ate from that $80,000 banquet, they don't answer my calls anymore. I'm alone, completely alone. And I finally understand what it's like to be rejected by the people who are supposed to love you." "Good," I said simply. "Now you know how it feels." "Julia, Your 3 minutes are up, Danielle. I have nothing more to say to you. You learned a lesson. I hope you use it to be a better person. But your personal growth is not my responsibility, just as Leo's is not." I turned to leave, but her voice stopped me. "He talks about you all the time, you know. Leo. I was at the shelter a few days ago picking up some things. I saw him. He's shattered. Completely broken. He says your name in his sleep. He cries at night. He doesn't eat. The social workers are worried about him." I felt a pang in my chest, but I kept my expression neutral. "That's not my problem. I know, and you have every right to feel that way. I just wanted you to know, in case some part of you still cares, a part of me will always care," I admitted. "I'm his mother. That doesn't disappear. But caring doesn't mean rescuing him. Not anymore." Danielle nodded slowly. "You're stronger than I thought. When I met you, I thought you were weak. An older woman with no resources, no style, nothing to offer. But I was wrong. You're the strongest person I've ever met. And Leo was an idiot for not seeing it." "Yes," I said. "He was." And this time, I did leave, leaving her standing in the middle of the market aisle. When I got home and told Irene about the encounter, she shook her head. "That woman only came to unload her guilt. She doesn't really care about you." "I know, but at least she had the courage to face me. That's more than many people do. And what are you going to do with the information she gave you? About Leo?" "Nothing," I replied, though my heart felt heavy. "I can't keep being his savior. If he's not well, there are professionals at that shelter who can help him. I've already given everything I had to give, but that night, I couldn't sleep." Danielle's words echoed in my head. Leo crying, saying my name, not eating, broken. The maternal part of me screamed for me to go to him, to comfort him, to forgive him. But there was another voice, newer but stronger, that reminded me what it had cost me to get to this point. The pain, the humiliation, the abandonment. At 3 a.m, I got up and took out the folder I had been keeping for months. All the wedding photos, the articles, the messages where Leo had rejected me, the medical bills, the receipts for everything I had sold to survive. I had saved it, thinking I would one day use it for something. To confront him. To show him the evidence of his betrayal. But now, looking at all that material, I realized something. I didn't need his acknowledgement. I didn't need him to publicly admit what he had done. I knew the truth. Irene knew the truth. And that was enough. Or so I thought. 2 weeks later, I received a call that would change everything. It was Robert, an old friend of my late husband who worked at a local newspaper. "Julia, can I come visit? There's something I need to talk to you about." "What is it, Robert?" "I'd rather tell you in person." When he arrived that afternoon, he brought a laptop with him. He sat in my small living room and showed me the screen. "Do you recognize this?" he asked. It was a blog that had gone viral in recent weeks. The title read, "Confessions of an Unworthy Son, How I Betrayed My Mother for Vanity." With trembling hands, I began to read. It was Leo. He had written the whole story. From my accident to his denial of help, from the $250,000 wedding to his downfall, he hadn't hidden anything. He had exposed every sordid detail, every selfish decision, every moment of cruelty. And at the end, he had written, "My mother closed the door on me, and she had every right to do so." I'm not writing this seeking her forgiveness. I'm not writing this hoping someone will feel sorry for me. I'm writing this because other people need to read this story. They need to understand that mothers are not infinite resources, that sacrifice has limits, that when you betray the people who love you unconditionally, the consequences are devastating and permanent. If there's a son reading this who is taking his mother for granted, I hope my story makes him think. I hope he doesn't make the same mistakes I did. Because the price of those mistakes is losing the only person who ever loved you without conditions. The blog had thousands of comments, thousands of people sharing their own stories, mothers who had been abandoned, children who had regrets, families broken by selfishness and ingratitude. This went viral a week ago, Robert explained. It's been shared all over social media. Leo didn't use his real name or yours. But the story is so specific that many people in the community have been wondering if it's real. Why are you showing me this? I asked, unable to look away from the screen. Because several media outlets have contacted Leo for interviews, TV shows, podcasts, magazines. They all want to talk to him. And he's rejected all of them, saying he won't do any interviews without your permission, that this isn't his story to exploit. It's yours. I looked at Robert, processing the information. Did he ask you to come? No, I came on my own. Because I think you should know what's happening, and because I think you have a decision to make. What decision? If you want this story to come out completely, with names, with details, Leo says he'll only do it if you give your permission. He says he's already done enough damage to you, and he won't expose you publicly without your consent. Irene, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. It's your decision, Julia. But think carefully. If this story comes out completely, Leo will be publicly destroyed. His name will be tarnished forever. But you'll also be exposing your own pain, your own humiliation. Are you ready for that? I sat in silence for several minutes, staring at the laptop screen. Leo's words, raw and honest, exposing every one of his mistakes. Thousands of comments from people who had been touched by the story. Crying mothers, regretful children, reflecting families. I don't need to think about it, I said finally, closing the laptop. My answer is no. Robert looked at me, surprised. Are you sure? This could be your chance to. To what? I interrupted. To get revenge? To publicly destroy my son? I've already done what I had to do. I closed the door on him. I spoke my truth. I set my boundaries. I don't need the whole world to know what happened to feel validated. But Julia, Irene intervened. This could help other people, other mothers who are going through the same thing, other children who need to hear this lesson. It's already helping, I pointed out. The blog is there. People are reading it. They're sharing it. It's starting conversations. They don't need real names for it to have an impact. In fact, the anonymity probably makes more people identify with the story. Robert nodded slowly. You're a wise woman, Julia. Many people in your situation would have taken this opportunity to tear Leo to pieces publicly. I'm no longer in the business of tearing my son to pieces, I said. I'm in the business of rebuilding my own life. And exposing myself on television, reliving that pain over and over for audiences, is not part of that rebuilding. After Robert left, Irene made me tea and we sat in silence for a while. Are you going to tell Leo your decision? She finally asked. No. Let him find out on his own. I don't have to explain my decisions to him anymore. That blog. Does it change anything for you? I thought carefully before answering. It doesn't change what he did. It doesn't erase the pain he caused. But it shows that he's at least trying to understand. He's taking public responsibility, even if it's anonymously. And that's more than many children do. But is it enough? No, I answered honestly. It's not enough. But it's also not about whether it's enough or not. It's about where I am now. And I'm in a place where I need to move forward, not stay trapped in the past. The days went on. I rejected 3 calls from television producers who had somehow gotten my number. I blocked several unknown numbers. I deleted emails from journalists wanting my side of the story. Leo's blog continued to grow. It now had tens of thousands of followers. He wrote regularly about his recovery process, about the lessons he was learning at the shelter, about how he was trying to become a better person. He never mentioned my name. He never revealed details that could identify me. He kept his word. A month after my conversation with Robert, I was in the park near my house, sitting on a bench enjoying the Sunday. My back still hurt. It probably always would. But I had learned to live with the pain, to not let it define me. A young woman sat on the bench next to me. She was about 30 years old, professionally dressed, with a tablet in her hands. "Excuse me," she said timidly. "Are you Julia?" My body tensed immediately. "That depends on who's asking. My name is Francesca. I'm a journalist, but I'm not here in that capacity. I'm here as a daughter." "I don't understand." She took a deep breath, her eyes filling with tears. "I've been following Leo's blog, Confessions of an Unworthy Son. And every word he wrote, I could have written myself. I treated my mother badly too. I took her for granted too. I chose my career, my social life, my ambitions over her too. And when I read that story, something inside me broke. Tears were now streaming freely down her face. I called my mother that same day. I apologized for years of neglect. I started visiting her regularly, helping her with her bills, taking her to the doctor. And she forgave me, even though I didn't deserve it. But before I did all that, I needed to find you. How did you find me? I did some research, asked discreet questions, followed leads. It wasn't easy, but I'm a journalist. I know how to find information. And I needed to thank you. Thank me for what? For having the courage to set boundaries. For showing me, and thousands of other people, that mothers also have a right to their dignity. That forgiveness is not mandatory. That we can love our children and still refuse to be trampled by them. She took my hand in hers. You saved my relationship with my mother because you showed me what I could lose if I continued down that path. And I know there are thousands of people like me who have changed after reading that story. Mothers who have learned to set boundaries. Children who have learned to value. Families that have reconciled because they read about one that couldn't. Her words touched me deeply. I had never thought of my pain as something that could help others. I had always seen it only as my personal burden. "I don't know what to say," I admitted. "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know that your story matters, that your pain was not in vain, that even if you and Leo don't reconcile, your experience is healing other families. And that's something beautiful that came out of something terrible." After Francesca left, I sat on that bench for hours, processing everything. The sun set, the park lights came on, and I was still there, thinking. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I looked up Leo's blog and read every entry, all of them, from the first confession to the most recent. I read about how he had gotten a part-time job washing dishes, how he was saving every penny, how he had started therapy with a psychologist who worked for free at the shelter, how he was learning to live with less, to value simple things, to measure his success, not in money but in character. I read about the nights he thought of me, when he wanted to call me, but stopped himself because he knew he needed to respect my boundaries. When he cried remembering my face as I closed the door. And I read the most recent entry, published that very day. It's been 4 months since my mother closed the door. 4 months of living with the consequences of my actions. And the funny thing is, I'm not waiting for her to come back. I'm not counting the days until she forgives me. I'm learning to live with the idea that she might never. And that's okay. She has every right. I don't deserve her forgiveness. What I deserve is to live the rest of my life trying to be the man I should have been when she needed me. Not for her. For me. Because I need to be able to look at myself in the mirror and not hate what I see. I closed the laptop, tears silently streaming down my cheeks. Leo was changing. Really changing. Not because I was pressuring him, not because he was expecting a reward, but because he had finally hit rock bottom and had decided to climb back up. But that didn't mean I had to be there to see it. Irene came the next day, and I told her about Francesca, about the blog, about everything. "And?" she asked. "How do you feel?" "Confused," I admitted. Part of me is proud of him, that he's doing the work, that he's growing, but another part still hurts, still remembers. Both things can be true at the same time, Irene said wisely. You can be proud of his growth and still be hurt by what he did to you. One thing doesn't cancel out the other. Do you think I'll ever be able to forgive him? I don't know, Julia. Forgiveness isn't something you can force. It comes when it comes, if it comes at all. And it's okay if it never does. Your healing doesn't depend on forgiving him. It depends on making peace with yourself. And if he keeps changing, if he becomes that better man he says he wants to be, then that will be wonderful for him. And if one day you decide you want to see him, it will be your decision, on your terms. But don't do it because you feel obligated. Don't do it because you think a good mother must always forgive. Do it only if you truly want to. Her words gave me a peace I hadn't felt in a long time. A week later, I received a letter. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was from Leo. I held it in my hands for hours without opening it. Part of me wanted to burn it unread. Another part needed to know what it said. Finally, just before going to sleep, I opened it. Mom, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect a reply. I just needed to write it. I've gotten a permanent job. Nothing fancy. I work in construction, but it's honest and I like it. It makes me feel useful. I've moved out of the shelter and into a small room. It's not much, but it's mine. I keep it like you kept our apartment when I was a child. Clean, tidy, with love. I'm saving money. Not much, but some, and I have a plan. I'm going to pay you back everything. The $30,000 I denied you. It's going to take me years, maybe decades, but I'm going to do it. Not because I expect it to fix things, but because it's the right thing to do. I know you may never forgive me. I know this might be the last time you hear from me, and I accept that. Your peace is more important than my redemption. I just wanted you to know that I'm okay, that I'm working on myself, and that every day when I wake up, I think of you and everything you sacrificed for me, and that motivates me to be better. I love you, Mom. I've always loved you, even if I didn't show it. Leo. I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer with all the other documents I had accumulated over these months. I didn't reply. I didn't call. I just put it away and went on with my life. Because that's what I was doing now, living my life. Irene was right when she told me I needed to start living, not just surviving. So I started making small but significant changes. I joined a group of older women at the community center. We met twice a week to knit, chat, and simply enjoy each other's company. Many of them had their own stories of ungrateful children, unrecognized sacrifices, and silent pains. And it was liberating to discover I wasn't alone in my experience. I started doing physical therapy more regularly. I couldn't afford the full therapy I needed, but I found a community clinic that offered low-cost services. My body would never be the same, but I was learning to work with my limitations instead of against them. And most importantly, I started doing things for myself, small things that would have seemed selfish to me before. I bought flowers for my apartment, even though they weren't necessary. I would have a coffee at a cafe on Sundays, even though I could make it at home. I read books I enjoyed without feeling like I was wasting time. I was learning, for the first time in my life, to be something more than a mother, to be Julia. 3 months after receiving Leo's letter, one Saturday afternoon, Irene and I were at the market when I heard a familiar voice. Julia? I turned around and saw Mariana, Danielle's cousin, who had warned me months ago about Leo's situation. Mariana, I said with a genuine smile. How are you? Good, very good, she replied, returning the smile. But I wanted to tell you something. I've seen Leo. My heart sped up, but I kept my expression neutral. Oh, yes? Yes. He's working on the construction of a building near my house. I didn't know it was him until I saw him up close. He looks different, thinner, more muscular from the physical work, but also more serene, if that makes sense. Did you talk to him? Briefly? I bought him a juice because it was so hot. He didn't want to accept it at first, but I insisted. He told me he's saving money, that he has a plan. He didn't tell me for what, but I think you know what it's for. I nodded slowly. And how did he look? How was he? Tired, but happy. I know it sounds strange, but he seemed genuinely at peace, as if he had finally found his place in the world. He's not that arrogant man I met at the wedding anymore. He's someone completely different. After Mariana left, Irene looked at me curiously. Are you going to go see him? No, I replied without hesitation. His growth is his own. He doesn't need my validation. And I don't need to see him to know he's changing. His letter was enough. But aren't you curious? Of course I'm curious. I'm his mother. I'll always be curious about how he is, what he's doing, if he's okay. But curiosity isn't a good enough reason to break the boundaries I've set. I'm not ready yet. And maybe I never will be. And that has to be okay. 6 months after closing the door on Leo, I received a package in the mail. There was no return address, but inside was an envelope with money, $5,000 in cash, and a brief note. First part of my debt. I will continue to send what I can every 6 months until the $30,000 is complete. I don't expect a reply. I just need you to know I'm keeping my word. L. Irene was with me when I opened the package. We looked at the money in silence. He's keeping his word, she said finally. Yes, I replied, feeling conflicting emotions. He's keeping his word. What are you going to do with the money? I thought for a moment. I'm going to use it to pay my debts, for physical therapy, to live a little better. It's my money. Money I should have had from the beginning. You're not going to write to him? You're not going to thank him? No. He's not doing this for my gratitude. He's doing it because it's the right thing to do. And thanking him would be giving him something he doesn't need. My approval. The months continued to pass. Every 6 months, another package with money would arrive. Never more than he could afford, always with a simple note. Leo never asked for anything. He never asked how I was. He just kept his word. And while he was doing his work, I was doing mine. I continued to build my life. I had paid off all my medical debts. My apartment was no longer empty. I had bought some new furniture, nothing fancy, but comfortable and mine. I had started teaching sewing classes at the community center, sharing a skill I had developed over years of need. I had friends now, a circle of women who appreciated me for who I was, not for what I could give them. We went for walks, went to the movies, celebrated birthdays together. It was a simple life, but it was mine. A year after I had closed the door, Leo's blog posted its final entry. Irene showed it to me, knowing I no longer followed it. This is my last post. Not because my journey of growth is over, but because it's time to live my life in private, without an audience. I've learned what I needed to learn. I've changed what I needed to change. The rest is continuous work that I will do in silence. To all who followed me, thank you. To the mothers who found validation in my story, I apologize for the pain my confession may have caused by reminding you of your own wounds. To the children who saw themselves reflected in my mistakes and decided to change, I say, it's not too late. But also understand that forgiveness is not guaranteed. Some doors, once closed, never reopen, and that's okay. To my mother, wherever she is, if she ever reads this, thank you for closing the door on me. You saved my life by doing so. You forced me to grow. You taught me that unconditional love does not mean accepting any abuse. You were stronger than I ever was. And although I may never be able to tell you in person, I want you to know that you are my hero. This is my last confession from an unworthy son. I hope one day to be able to simply call myself a worthy man. Goodbye. I closed the laptop after reading. Tears were running down my face, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of closure, of acknowledgement, of something akin to pride. Are you okay? Irene asked. Yes, I replied, surprised to realize it was true. I'm okay. 2 years after closing that door, I was in my apartment preparing dinner when there was a knock. It was a soft, respectful knock, not insistent at all. I looked through the peephole and saw Leo. But it wasn't the desperate Leo who had come 2 years ago. This Leo had short, clean hair, simple but dignified work clothes, and a serene expression on his face. In his hands, he held an envelope. My heart was pounding. I could simply not open it. I could ignore him as I had so many times before. He would leave. He would respect my decision. But something had changed in me too. I had done my work. I had healed enough to face him without falling apart, without losing my dignity, without sacrificing my peace. I opened the door. Leo looked up, and I saw genuine surprise in his eyes, as if he hadn't expected me to open it. Mom, he said softly. Leo, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I was just coming to bring you this, he extended the envelope. It's the last payment. The full $30,000. It took 2 years. But it's all there. I took the envelope without looking at it. Thank you. We stood in silence for a moment that felt like an eternity. You look good, he said finally. You look at peace. I am, I replied. I built a life, a good life. I'm glad. I'm truly glad. And you? I asked, surprising myself. How are you? Good. I work hard. I live simply. I go to therapy. I try to be better every day. It's not the life I imagined, but it's an honest one. And that's worth more than all the money I ever had. I nodded slowly. I'm glad for you. Mom, I know I have no right to ask for anything. I know I closed that door years ago with my decisions. But I just want you to know that if one day, at some point, you decide you want to see me, have a coffee, talk, I'll be here. Not today, not tomorrow, but whenever you're ready, if you ever are. There's no pressure, no expectations. I just want you to know that the door on my side is always open. I looked him in the eyes. This son who had been my everything, who had shattered me, who had hit rock bottom and climbed back. Maybe one day, I said honestly. But I'm not making any promises. I don't need promises, he replied with a sad smile. I just needed you to know. He nodded once, turned, and started to walk away. When he reached the stairs, he stopped and turned back. Mom, one last thing. Thank you for everything you did for me, for the sacrifices you made, and thank you for closing the door on me. It saved my life. And then he was gone. I closed the door gently and leaned against it. Irene, who had been waiting discreetly in my living room, came over. Are you okay? Yes, I said, and this time I was completely sure. I'm okay. That night, alone in my apartment, I opened the envelope. Inside was the last $5,000 and a letter. The last letter. I read it. It was beautiful, full of gratitude, genuine regret, humble hope. Leo had grown. He had become the man he always should have been, and I had become the woman I needed to be, a woman who knew her worth, who set boundaries, who chose herself. I didn't know if there would ever be a reconciliation, if we could ever have a relationship again. Maybe. Maybe not. But what I did know was this. My story didn't end with an ungrateful son. My story ended with me, Julia, 67 years old, living a dignified life, surrounded by true friends, with peace in my heart and strength in my spirit. I had closed one door, and in doing so, I had opened another, the door to myself, to my own life, to my own happiness. And that, I discovered, was worth more than any forced reconciliation. It was worth more than any apology. It was worth everything. I sat by the window, watching the city light up with the evening lights, and for the first time in years, I smiled. Not a sad smile, not a bitter smile, but a smile of true peace. I had survived. I had healed. I had grown. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.